First of all, welcome to everyone. I know I said some hellos earlier in the conversation, but I really do truly want to welcome you. I'm excited that we have this time together. I know these are very uncertain times and folks are traversing uncharted territory. So I thank you really for leaning into this conversation this morning. So when I think back, I joined CCA actually this month is my 2-year anniversary. So I attended the convening in Chicago was my first introduction to the Alliance in 2018. And when I think back to that, I do so with fond memories. And from that conversation to last year, 2019 in Phoenix, Arizona, I've continued to talk about the future of the college completion movement because this is a movement that we've been on together. And even before I was with CCA, I was a part of the movement toward thinking more fervently about what the 2025 goal of college completion looks like. And so, can you advance the slide, please? I think the interesting part is that, folks have been asking, well, what is CCA now and what's different, what's changed? I would say that it's really the same vision that Stan Jones had when he birthed CCA, when he envisioned CCA. That vision is still very much what's ahead of us. And I would just say there's a slightly different approach. And so please advance the slide. I think, as we think about where we've been, this slide does not represent the totality of who we are at CCA, but these are some of our partners in partnership also with you as our Alliance members. But, our field was born over this time, and we've had the growth of the student success agenda. And so a lot of us have now come together over this 11-year period to say that we're going to really put student success and completion at the forefront of what we're doing around how we address students. And so as we think about this now, and can you please advance the slide? And where we're going, I think we're really at an inflection point, right? So we now find ourselves in a moment that will forever shape higher education. So COVID-19, of course, is ubiquitous, and an increased focus on racial justice. I think these have provided an opportunity, and CCA was already a number of the things that we're looking at now. We've actually been there, but I think these two moments gave us an opportunity to really deepen and double down on our impact. And so we're taking a fresh look at what our impact looks like, and especially into the future. And so I would say that there was a CCA 1.0, which was Stan's vision, and it probably took us to about 2019 when we began to have a new perspective for how we need to move forward. And so we're calling it CCA 2.0, and I'll tell you a little bit about that. But I think what you'll see is that essentially it's the same mission, same vision, but with a slightly different, more refined approach. At the end of the day, we're still about college success for every student. And we talk about that. We literally mean for every student. However, we're also saying we cannot have college success for every student without focusing on closing gaps for Black, Latinx, first gen, adult, and low income learners. And so we're looking at where the data tell us we should go, closing gaps there so that we can then have a greater impact for all students. And so we know that there have been these conversations, and we're going to have to now we've highlighted these concerns over the many decades. The only difference now is that higher education is now faced with the decision. And I'd say it's a decision because we're going to have to make a real, because of this inflection point, are we going to transform or fail? And we've seen during these last 8 months that many institutions have merged, closed, or had to really significantly change their focus. And so it really is about transformation or failure. And so we chose this theme with liberty and justice for all because we began thinking about, all of us remember being young kids, and even now when you go to a baseball game or whatever the event may be, and you recite the Pledge of Allegiance, and we say with liberty and justice for all, and we say it sort of effortlessly, but I think we forget that that's really an ideal. We aren't there yet. And so we thought about this in terms of our work, that really equity will lead us. If we operate more equitably, it will actually lead us toward that liberty that we're all seeking, which is freedom, inclusion, and a more unified America. And so as an organization, we've also been doing our own work related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so we don't just turn the look out of a window. We also have a mirror that we've placed on ourselves as an organization and had to ask some hard questions about what does that mean for us. And so I know you all have seen these visuals or some iteration of these visuals, whether it's the kids looking over the fence. We chose this particular one because I think it highlights what inequality looks like. And you can see in that first slide, the tree is bent toward one person who can more easily have an apple fall on them. You also see in the next slide where, okay, both of them get helped. They get the same amount of, they both get a ladder, the same height of the ladder, but the tree is still bent. And then we see what equity looks like, where we give the other person a slightly higher ladder so they can reach the higher parts of the tree, but the tree is still bent. And I think at CCA, one of the things we've been talking about for some time is structural reform. We don't believe that these are the only models. We believe an alternative approach is possible. Next slide, please. And so we think that this slide actually more accurately reflects what CCA is focused on. We're actually focused on fixing the system to offer equal access to both tools and opportunities for students, as well as the faculty and administrators and leaders who serve them. And so this most resonates with us is this focus on justice, because this has been our mantra since the early days of CCA. And we have said for some time, we must fix the structures and campuses must be student ready, just as much as we say students must be college ready. And so I know some folks may say, well, we don't know what the political climate will be like after, the election is next week. And we agree that, we don't know what the future will hold. However, this has been the spirit of Complete College America, politics and anything else notwithstanding, right? And so we're going to continue to focus in a bipartisan way and also in a nonpartisan way on understanding the needs of our alliance. And we know the needs of our alliance members are varied. And so please know that we are here for you. It doesn't matter your political ideology. When we think about the value of higher education to advance our country and our democracy, I don't think that's a partisan issue. I think all of us can agree that it's important. And so no matter what happens on November 3rd, the work will remain focused on closing those achievement gaps with the groups that we talked about: Black, Latinx, Indigenous, rural, adult learners, first generation students, and poor students. And so if we, meaning the higher education sector, are going to be at the center of the economic recovery that we know COVID-19 demands right now, and be associated with this national discourse on economic recovery, then we're going to have to move to where the ball is going and not to where the ball is. And that's what I want to talk a little bit about more now. Next slide, please. Thank you. So CCA has spent extensive time listening and learning. And so I mentioned that we've turned the mirror inward and thinking about our own processes, our hiring, our contracting, our HR policies, our compensation, everything. But we've also been listening to you. And so just know that 2020 has been a productive year for CCA, COVID-19 and racial injustice notwithstanding. And here are just a sample of some of the activities that we've been engaged in, but also know that these have also provided really intense learnings for us to understand from our alliance members, from our CCA fellows, what you need, what you don't need right now, what's important to you and what's not. We want to make sure that you truly get a return on your investment as a member of the CCA Alliance, and that we understand what's most important to you in real time. And so we want to know how we are well positioned to help you do the work. And as I think about that, I have to share a couple of slides with you that I think will help position your understanding of where we are now versus where we have been and where we will continue to go. Next slide, please. So CCA has always focused on policy. You've known us for our policy and our advocacy campaigns around the game changers, around strategies that work, and the conditions for change. And in the past, the strategies have been focused really on the game changers, right? So we want to make sure we set the conditions. We've come into your state sometimes and helped to move policy initiatives forward. And sometimes we've done that with a little bit of a heavy hand, and we've refined the way we do that as well. I'll talk a little bit about that, but this has been our overall approach. But I would say that where the approach gets refined, I'll talk about that under each of these buckets. So for policy, we're building a movement. We've been focused on building a movement focused on student success. And so, of course, we have the Alliance. We move policy and advocacy through the Alliance and in partnership with the Alliance, we've provided reports and provided data to help you sort of reflectively look at your own college completion goals for your state. But we said, well, okay, we help with the policy, but what are the conditions that need to be met for that policy to be welcomed? And so that's the second pillar of our work. And so we've come into your states and we provided workshops, we've done coaching and support, we've done events, we've done convenings, we've done them at of course, the national level, the regional level, and then sometimes even at the state level. But then we heard back from you that now that you've had the policy agenda set, you've had some changes that have happened there. You even had some conditions that happened to help you facilitate this, but you didn't really know how to implement these strategies on the ground. And so that's the third pillar of where I would say the approach has been refined. And we could talk more there. So we've partnered to change the institutional culture, and now we're helping to actually transform the student experience. And so now we're really focusing with you to conduct needs assessments around what do you need to really effectuate the change that we've been discussing? What policies are needed at the state level to effectuate that change? And then how do we help you strategically plan in order to actually implement the strategies that we're talking about? And then what strategies are in our toolkit to help us to do that? And so we can move forward. If we look at the whole of the policy, the conditions, and the strategies, I would say really, again, as you can see, not much has changed except for we're really doubling down on how to help you implement the strategies on the ground. And that's really the only thing that is newish, if I would say anything, but I would also say it is also doing so with an equity lens and an equity approach to make sure we're really going to where the need is most. In the past, we would partner with states or with institutions that were just, they contacted us and said they needed help, but now we're saying, great, now let's go where the need is. Let's dig a level deeper. So I would say our conversation is really about going deeper into the conversation about who needs the help within your institutions and how do we help you get to the completion goals that you'd like to get to by looking at who needs the help the most. Next slide, please. So we've asked this question, what is our role in this college completion movement, past, present, and future? And as you can see, we are still uniquely poised to lead this movement. We want you to be there with us. We want to make sure, though, that we're keenly tuned into what you need now, especially because things have changed so much. And I would say that as we're talking about CCA 2.0, do not fear. We are still focused on our strategies. We're doubling down on many of them. We've heard from some of our partners that, we need, guided pathways more than ever, or we need co-requisite support more than ever. So we're actually hearing from folks that we need to really have more of an intentional doubling down on some of our strategies. And we certainly will do that, but we're doing that with an eye towards equity. We're doing that in a way that we can actually help you to implement strategies and tailor and customize them to your state or to your institution. So we don't have a cookie cutter approach. What we really do is around customization. And we're having conversations about how we assist state systems and institutions that want to do something different, but don't know how. And with that said, I'll turn it over, please, to my colleague, Dr. Danifu Elston.
Thank you, Yolanda, and welcome to everyone. I will admit that this seems a little weird. Normally we are in a location together, and I'm looking at all the faces, really quick across the screen, and so I think about all the the conversations that I'll have with colleagues at the bar at the end of an annual convening, or I see Loretta, and we always give each other a nice, embrace, and she always asks how my children are doing. So I first just want to start by saying thank you very much for all the work that you continue to do. I don't think that we say thank you enough for the contributions, especially in the midst of this unique time period that we're in, specifically around the pandemic. And I'd be remiss if I just didn't just kind of honor the fact that many, I've heard from some of you and from many of our colleagues and family members where they've lost loved ones to COVID-19, and you still show up and you still do the work. And that is extremely important because it places this college completion movement as a critical component of what we're going to need to do to ensure that we have a robust recovery in this country. So my continued thoughts wishes, blessings to you and your families. We've been off the road for a while now. It's been, kind of odd not having been on an airplane since the end of February. But in light of the craziness that's going on in the world, I will admit that it's been good to be able to be at home with my children and spend a little bit of more time with them. I'm originally from Los Angeles, California. Some of you guys know that. So I'm feeling real good right now. The Lakers just won a championship and the Dodgers are one game away from winning the World Series. So I'm flying real high right now. But even with that, nothing was more exciting than getting a chance to talk to you about some of our new thinking that Yolanda mentioned a little earlier. I think that, I've been at CCA for 6 years, and now, in my role as Senior Vice President and Chief of Staff, I spend a lot of time reflecting on these meetings that we've had, these visits to campuses, these academies and summits, and all the things that we've done. And one of the things that continues to come to mind is that the pandemic has probably reinforced the fact that many of the CCA strategies need to be accelerated more than ever. The things that we've been talking about, many of them have kind of been, okay, maybe I'll do this strategy, maybe I won't do that strategy. And now we're realizing all those different things are a part of one larger comprehensive whole that needs to happen. I'll also share that as, I've reflected about, states and what's going on in this larger movement and the momentum of the Alliance, there are still too many institutions that have not even started to scratch the surface of many of the strategies that we've been amplifying for the past decade. And I think that gives us an opportunity. This moment gives us an opportunity to figure out whether, this dream that we have of college completion, is it something that we're going to find or is it something that we're going to create? And I believe the terminology around impatient reformers is around a group of individuals who believe we can create what it is that we seek to have in this country. And so I get a chance over the next couple of minutes just to talk to you about our evolution when it comes to the game changers. And I know that some of you read the blog post and saw some of the outreach messages via social media. What is this going to mean for the game changers? Are we still using the game changers? And I want to talk to you a little bit about that. But before I do that, I want to take you on a little bit of a journey because for some of you, you've been an Alliance team member for, maybe a year or two. For some of you, you've been part of this movement since, 2009, 2010, when we first began. So let's talk a little bit about the game changers and how those conversations have affected our thinking around strategy. All right, so what you see in front of you is this kind of hodgepodge of ideas over a particular timeline. So many of you remember that in 2013, we released, the publication, The Game Changers, and we kind of highlighted the things that we thought were a couple of key structural components that would be important for college completion. And, we were behind the work around performance funding and although we realized that performance funding has not completely closed the gap for many of our most vulnerable students, it was an important moment in getting everyone just to not think about enrollment, but to think about college completion. But in 2013, these were the game changers. Performance funding, we were at that time calling it co-requisite remediation. 15 to finish didn't even exist at that point. We were calling it time and intensity. And we were at the forefront of amplifying guided pathways. So we were highlighting the learnings and the understanding that guided pathways included a lot of different things. I think now if you ask any individual on a campus, are you doing guided pathways? They'll say yes. And then if you ask them, what exactly are you doing? Everybody says something completely different. So it's great that we've gotten the field moving on this larger effort. At the same time, it is clear to us that there needs to be a little bit more clarity around what we mean related to these various strategies. And even as we move into 2017, things like structured schedules, I wanted to focus on that because now everyone realizes in this pandemic environment and with more adult learners returning to our campuses, we need to have some schedules that make sense for their lives and the predictability that they need. And so this is just designed to kind of show you how these different things have evolved. Sometimes people are like, well, are the game changers changing? Well, we've been actually evolving and changing our language and our vernacular for a number of years. And so now we're in a space where, we're adding things around career alignment and purpose first. And some of you have started to weave these together, and we've called them momentum pathways. I think that all of these different language and approaches, without really providing that clarity that CCA is known for, has honestly confused some folks. And so we've been spending some time thinking about what would be some key strategic pillars that highlight the student experience. Even when you think now, and I'll go ahead and pivot, about the things, so those of you that are doing pathways, whether you're a community college or a four-year institution, even if you follow the larger effort that is done by the Pathways Collaborative that was rolled out by AACC, the American Association of Community Colleges, we talked about helping students choose a path, start a path, stay on that path, graduate, and then ensure that students are learning. For us, what we've been thinking about as we kind of bracket and bucket all these strategies is that they really fall into four key categories, and we're calling them four key pillars. Those pillars being purpose, momentum, structure, and support. And the reason why we focused on these were for a few different reasons. One is that the field continues to evolve. And so individuals will say, well, I'm doing the game changers, but what does this mean for students if I'm working on basic needs? Or I understand guided pathways includes all of this, but I'm also trying to evolve our academic maps. And how do I help students choose the right major? And so we've been thinking about it within this larger structure. And I want to be able to show you right now kind of what we tended to focus on, which was how do we ensure that the game changers are still direct, are still coordinated, but provide for that level of adaptability, but then also focus on the thing that Yolanda was talking about, which is how do we ensure that justice and structures are a part of that work to ensure equitable outcomes. And this is what we've landed on. And so what you will see right now are those core pillars that I mentioned. And so it's a bigger toolbox, but they're still game-changing strategies. And so if you ever wondered, well, what does this mean for the game changers? They are still there. They're still woven into all of this work that we're doing. And so as you look at the things that might be a little bit more bold, you'll see that, career exploration and purpose first and co-requisite support, all those things are still there, but we've started to align them around areas that allow for customization by institutions, because some institutions are saying we're doing guided pathways, some institutions are saying we're doing this strategy, that strategy, but largely they're thinking about what is the big thing that I need for my students right now. So am I focusing on structures? Am I focusing on how we get them through as quickly as possible? Am I thinking about the selections that they make through this process? And then how do I keep some guardrails in that process? And so this is kind of our new iteration of how we will be talking about the game changers, talking about our strategies broadly, and these core pillars. I would just kind of hone in on a couple things. Many of these things you're familiar with. Credit for competency has been a part of our adult learner strategy. Multiple measures was kind of part of the co-requisite support conversation. Even 15 to finish, we found that those of you who've been here for a while, we know that what that means. We know it's about 30 credit hours in a year. But people are asking, what does this mean for part-time students? And so just making sure that we make some slight nuance to the language where it's about reducing their time to degree. And then, of course, proactive advising and all the things that you're familiar with, they're all there. When you see under structure, smart schedules, that's the idea of structured scheduling. How do we make it more ideal for the students in mind? And so this is how you will hear CCA talking about the work as we continue to evolve and move forward. I think the big thing for us, and if you just look at this example of career exploration or purpose-driven strategies, equity is in the details. And so when Yolanda talks about the 2.0, the 2.0 is like, okay, you've done this, because you ask everyone, have you done the game changers? Everyone says yes. And then you ask them, well, are you closing gaps? And everyone gets real silent. And so we're asking specific questions about culture, and what's happening, who's being served, who's not being served. And this is just an example around career exploration. You know, the types of things that you would have to go a layer deeper to start finding out where there might need to be some modifications or some intentional focus in that process. And so for us, we think the benefits of this, of these pillars, it gives us a lot of flexibility. You know, it helps us define the completion agenda broadly. It helps us focus on our strategic planning, which is our strength, because when we go to a campus, people want to know, this is what my campus needs. And the game changer language was good, but what about this thing or that thing? And where do we weave it in? And so it allows us to evolve and add new strategies as things emerge. And it places an equity at the center of everything that we do. And so if you wanted to put that conversation that Yolanda had and couple it with this conversation and these notes that I'm sharing with you, it looks like this. If people were to ask, what is CCA? How do you do your work? What's the secret sauce? This is it, visually. We still are focused on policy, conditions, and strategies. And we do that through our alliance, and the goal is college completion. We don't get there without placing equity at the center and ensuring that our voice, our megaphone, the data that we have, the research, all is used to move toward that college completion goal. And I think for us, the larger social impact is ensuring more social mobility, making sure that we have more economic opportunity in this country, and ensuring that racial justice is at the forefront of our efforts. And so we're excited to continue to talk to you about this, to move in this direction. And I think the only way we get to this is through partnering and to making sure that our alliance members help us think about what's next, that they are at the forefront of moving these efforts forward,